Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon-Jackson, and I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
I am Richard Castle, your co-host, co-pilot, producer of this podcast. How's everything going, Julie?
Everything is swell, Richard.
You know, I talk about this podcast with people all the time, like, just friends or strangers.
Just random people on the street.
No, but people ask me what you do and what you're up to, and this is a part of my life. We do it every week. So I was actually just walking, and I ran into a mutual friend of ours, Will. And he and his partner just adopted a second baby.
Yep.
So he was walking with his little newborn baby. It was so interesting because just as in our podcast, people are so eager to find others who are doing what they're doing or going through what they're going. He said to me, "Do you have any adoption in your family?" And I thought, that's such a good way of putting it too. Not are you adopted or anything.
Do you have any adoption in your family?
Yeah. And I thought, and I said, well, yes, I do actually. And so it just reminded me that we all just sort of want to seek out stories that
like mine.
Yeah, so that we're not alone. And I know he knows he's not alone, clearly.
Yeah.
A lot of people have adopted. But, because then he started to tell me his story about how, oh gosh, they're flying the birth mother out from some other state. She's going to be in the baby's life. So everyone's got their own.
Is this the same birth mother of their first child?
It is not.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I know that she's in their life.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's going to be, another birth mother.
I love that.
Yeah, it's such an interesting arrangement. And especially when we talk about so many things where there was this shame and this, the secret and the walls that come up between birth parents and
It's
their
different. It's so
yeah,
different now.
it's
and
a new
so
world.
So much healthier,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Did you tell Will about the podcast?
I did mention it, yes. He actually knew about it through Facebook.
Oh,
but
right.
I don't know that he had listened, but perhaps he will now that I forced him to talk.
Maybe Will listen.
But it's just, I love that. I love, we seek out our own, not kind, that's not the right way of putting it, but people who have similar stories.
Who have similar experiences. And there's something connecting about commiserating with experiences and acknowledging similarities and differences, I think.
And his little baby, he was so cute. Oh, yeah, so cute.
I want to see him. I've seen pictures of him, but I haven't. Yeah, okay. Congratulations, Will. Hey, Corrections Corner.
Oh, another one?
Well, remember we were talking about Levi Strauss?
Yes, but a few weeks ago you said we had to go back to episode 16 or something to correct something. I'm like, oh, so we're making mistakes?
Well,
this is a more recent correction.
These things, from last week, actually.
Oh, just last week, okay.
Yeah, we were talking about Levi's. How did we get on the subject of Levi's?
Because the truth was in his genes.
No, it was before that. When whatever.
Who knows? Levi Strauss, who created blue jeans.
Right,
Levi
and we
jeans.
said we wonder when he did that. Well, I knew it was Levi Strauss that invented them.
Yes.
And I said 1850 because they were invented during the gold rush. And I was close.
Yes.
I was close. Levi Strauss was born in 1829 in Bavaria. And
of the Bavarian Strausses.
And in Buttenheim, which is, it looks like Buttenheim, which is appropriate for jeans.
But I think Levi makes boots too now. So
Butt.
Oh.
Anywho, and then he and his family went to New York, and they had a dry goods business. And then he went to San Francisco for the gold rush in 1853 and founded a dry goods business. Then in 1873, Levi Strauss and Company and Jacob Davis received a U.S. patent for an improvement in fastening pocket openings.
So he came all the way. You're telling me he came all the way from Bavaria.
Yeah.
And came to New York and then went to San Francisco for the. Those lazy immigrants.
Exactly.
They don't help society at all, I say, as I'm sitting here wearing a pair of Levi's.
Have you heard that saying, they're as American as blue jeans? They're German, everyone.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
That's great.
Yeah.
But I just remembered why we were talking about blue jeans.
Why?
Because you mentioned that in your school that people used to tag you by running around and pulling off the label.
But how did we get to that part?
Oh, you're lucky I remember that.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a week ago.
We're very circuitous. Yeah. Okay, fine.
But anyway, so is that the end of the correction?
That's the end of the correction.
So basically you were about 23 years off.
Yeah, I don't
right.
think that's bad.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's amazing to me that this product that was created over 100 years ago, we still wear today.
Yep.
Like what other articles of clothing, specific articles like that, do we wear? I mean,
Bustles. I wear a bustle.
oh, do you?
Yeah, I do. Because I need to add to my rear end.
It does help you give you that that shape, that Victorian shape that you have.
Exactly. Because otherwise I look like a boy.
Yeah. I think I'm wearing a truss. I don't even know what that is, but
Truss, bow and truss.
what is that?
Oh, you know what it is? I think it's that thing that added dimension to your hips under a skirt. On the side, like saddlebags.
Then I am not wearing a truss.
You're not wearing a truss. I have a natural truss.
I was going to say I might be accused of wearing one, but I am not. I love that in I Love Lucy.
Here we go.
And I Love Lucy.
We should have a special song for the I Love Lucy moment.
Somebody says something to Ethel about she's wearing a bustle, and she's like, "I'm not wearing a bustle."
I am Ethel. Oh. I feel like I'm Ethel.
I remember seeing a button or a bumper sticker. It was a bumper sticker once on a car. It said, "Forget Lucy, I love Ethel."
Oh, yeah.
Ethel, I mean, she is the unsung hero.
You know, because I feel like I resemble Ethel certainly more than Lucy. Well, I could. With makeup and stuff, I bet I could look a lot like Ethel. Yeah. And I have a friend. You know Diane?
I'm not sure, but
she is the Lucy impersonator at Universal,
okay.
and she does all of the Lucy stuff. She's been Lucy for years. Mm-hmm. She's magnificent, and I've always thought, gosh, she needs an Ethel.
Oh my God,
I want to be
Vivian
her
Vance.
Ethel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I wonder if she's listening.
Yeah, if you're listening,
hey Diane,
Julie needs yet another job. She's got
because
so
I don't
many.
have enough things to do right now. Lord.
She's like, I'm a genetic genealogist. I do hair, and I'm Ethel.
And I'm Ethel. And a mom. All right.
Oh yeah, and a mom, of course.
Yeah.
So many facets to your identity.
And a housekeeper and a hairdresser. Did I say that? Did you already say that?
Yes.
And a former actress? Occasional singer.
And a swirling maelstrom of feminine supremacy.
Nice. All right. Hey, I got some swag that I'd like to promote.
Oh,
yeah.
You get swag?
Occasionally, yes.
I got nothing.
Well, maybe if you paid more attention to people reaching out to you.
That's true.
So I was reached out to by, I guess, this publishing company that is aware of the podcast.
Oh, nice.
And they have a book that they thought I might like and maybe talk about on the podcast. And so I thought I would. And I actually originally said, hey, why don't you just send it to me in the digital version?
Uh-huh.
Because last thing I need is another book. And we all know
it
I
looks
just don't
like
really
a
have
nice,
time.
handsome book, though.
Well, so then when I saw it, I realized it was a workbook.
Oh.
And so I was like, maybe you should just send that to me so I can describe it better and tell everybody about it. So what it is, it's from this company, I guess it's called Emotional Inheritance. The book is called Finding True Connections by Gareth St. John Thomas.
And what's the name of the company?
Emotional Inheritance.
Oh, Emotional Inheritance.
I think, wait, let's see. Did I write here about it?
Well, it says that right down at the bottom of the
Yes, it does,
cover.
but there was something about the publishing. Oh, it's from emotionalinheritance.org.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a detailed hands-on manual providing comprehensive guidance and instruction for getting started on writing your family history.
Oh, I like that. Because sometimes it seems a little overwhelming if you're starting from scratch and you don't know where to begin.
Right. And this is kind of a paint-by-numbers way of doing it. Let me see. Using the latest best practice techniques and know-how and divided into structured sections, it provides you with 100 most important questions to ask, as well as additional context for cues for each question, what to look for, and what traps to avoid.
Oh, I like that too.
Yeah. And I think this is aimed at talking to older members of your family to talk about, to get them talking,
Right.
talk about specific memories.
Yeah, because you don't want to just say, "Oh, tell me about your life."
Exactly.
Or what was it like when you were young?
Right, right. And I like this little snippet here. Our individual memories define us. Our tribal memories unite us. If these are missing, part of us is missing too. This book will help you to safely ensure that your family's memories don't slip away.
Oh, I like that idea too.
Yeah, and it's a nice looking book, and the front and back of them have this tree with frames on it that you can put, I guess, family names in it, or
I like that
or what
too.
have you.
Yeah,
yeah, and it's got things like early years. What is your first memory?
I see that, and there's places to write stuff in, so you can take
and then
notes.
your follow up question: do you think this memory has had a great influence upon you? If so, how?
Wow.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
So, thanks, emotionalinheritance.org.
Well, thanks for listening, and thanks, I guess, for sending Julie the swag.
Right. Thanks for sending me the swag. And I will put a link to it in the Facebook group as well as a picture of the book. Oh, I noticed something. In one of the private Facebook groups, somebody was venting, as happens a lot, especially in the Facebook group. And I've been doing a lot of research lately, utilizing my newspapers.com.
Your used papers?
My used papers. Yeah. My newspapers.com subscription. It's especially great for obituaries, which are often the only way that you can find out the names of people's children, since we only have the census up to 1940.
So tell me about this newspapers.com. So you subscribe to this, and it allows you to search archives of specific papers, or
a lot. I don't think it has every paper, but a lot of them. And it's a very easy, like you basically put in the name, and then in advance you put in the year or the approximate year or the
geographical
span.
area, perhaps?
And then the geographic area.
Okay.
And if that name exists in
one of the archives,
newspaper article. Yeah, and more often than not, it's obituaries, which is great because that's really what you need.
Yeah, I mean, unless somebody did something newsworthy besides die.
Yeah, right. And I've found some interesting stuff.
Yeah. Well, of course, you've got goat thieves. And
it's goat thieves and murderers, and I
don't know, how many. They don't search the Australian papers for that, though.
No, but there is an Australian version of it called Trove. And it's free.
You may not know this, but I used to go to like flea markets and things like that, and I would pick up old newspapers and magazines, like old magazines. I loved looking at the ads and just the things that they had talked about. So it didn't even matter whether it was an historically important date. It was just the fact that it was from 1906 or and it was the coolest thing to see how.
I love reading that stuff.
Yeah. I probably still have them somewhere, but I
actually bought them?
Oh, yeah. No, I used to.
Yeah. That's good.
They were always in plastic, and my mom would say, "Oh, don't take it out of the plastic." I'm like, well, what's the point in just looking at it? I mean, I want to take it out and read it.
Right. Well, they're probably collector's items for some at this point.
Probably.
So this anonymous person on Facebook needed to vent. And they said, don't assume obituaries are correct. My sister's first husband, deadbeat father of my niece and nephew, just died, and his fourth wife wrote his obituary. They were married over 25 years. It's a complete work of fiction. It could be stolen valor, except he did serve in Vietnam. Or Nam. But wasn't a POW. Apparently they said he was a POW. Wasn't hospitalized for 18 months. He graduated from New England College and an Ivy League university. Nope. She said, I pity the genealogy researcher who accepts this work of fiction as fact. There was only one tribute, a high school friend who wrote, I couldn't believe reading about his life and amazing accomplishments. I beat the urge to comment on her post. It was an insult and disrespecting his actual commendable military service to add these lies.
That's interesting. I mean, I never thought about it, but it's true. I mean, when my dad died, I wrote his obituary.
Yeah, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, I mean, but you just assume that whoever's writing that is going to put in facts, like, was married to so-and-so, is the father of leaves behind this, because that's really what you're using for genealogy, as far as, for facts.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily looking at their military service or anything
Right.
specific.
Although knowing that they had a military service tells you that you can search military records for more information.
Okay, well, maybe that wasn't the best example. What I mean is, like, I don't know, that they invented the special tomato slicer, and you're like, what? That's not really, important to what I need to know.
That would definitely go in my profile. Tomato slicer.
I don't know. I'm just making this stuff up,
Fine.
Julie. But it's true. Like,
Yeah.
I remember when I had to write, like, my mom's obituary, and I thought, like, what do you put in that? Like, other than just that they were the mother of so-and-so, the daughter
Yeah.
of so-and-so, whatever. Like, it feels very final, like it's the last word. And, of course, it is not the last
Yeah,
word.
interesting.
But it is something that goes in print somewhere.
And that people will look at for years to
Right,
come when they search for your mother's name.
Right.
I've found a lot of obituaries because they're not about genealogy, they're about connection.
Right, you want to see who they were married to and if they had any children.
But a lot of the time they will list people as their children who are not actually their children. They were possibly like children to them, which is lovely, but but for people like me, and there's no DNA involved, but I think there is because it says so, that can kind of lead you astray.
Well, yeah, we had talked about in another episode about, like, I knew a girl who was getting married, a woman who was getting married, and she didn't want, she'd had no relationship with her father, with her birth father,
Right.
and wanted to put her stepfather as her father on that marriage certificate. And I was like, oh, gosh, that's kind of like a legal document, and you don't want to, if anyone's ever searching you, right, they're going to think that was your father, and it wasn't. Even though he was like a father to you, there are other ways. We talked about there were other ways of her that she could honor him as a father in her life rather than putting it on a legal document that may be searched at some point.
Which it probably will. But then again, if you look at adoptees' birth certificates, they're made up.
Right, that's true.
They're, my birth certificate, well, no, mine didn't. But American birth certificates of adoptees say that their parents are their adoptive parents and never mentions it.
And you can argue that an obituary is not a legal document, but a death certificate would be.
A death certificate? However, death certificates are notoriously incorrect.
Yeah, and I think I might have mentioned this too, that my dad's death certificate, when it came back, had a mistake on it. Had I forget.
Mine
I think
did
it was
too. My dad's did too.
It had
I was horrified.
I'm trying to remember what it was. It was either his birth date or something was off, and I had to make them correct it because everybody that you have to notify, banks and all that stuff they check that date. It's a legal document.
Yeah.
It's got to be right.
They misspelled my grandmother's name. That's not okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember birth certificates were filled out by people that were nearby and maybe didn't know their history and didn't know who their kids were. I have tons of birth certificates that doesn't know who somebody's parents were or lists the wrong name of parents a lot.
Yeah.
So they're notorious for it. Probably even worse than obituaries because I think obituaries at least make an effort.
Right.
But again, it's not a legal document. So there you go. Newspapers.com and don't take obituaries too seriously. Let's take a break.
If you're enjoying CutOff Jeans, please subscribe, rate, and review. Now, back to Julie and me.
So, hey, I was watching the Today Show the other day.
As one does.
Yes. And there was a gentleman named Steve Lichtig telling a story. And he was actually on with Danny Shapiro, who's the writer who wrote Inheritance that I've talked about before.
Okay.
Yeah. So he spent his childhood, he was raised by Don and Mary Jane Lichtig and had 8 other siblings.
Okay.
Okay. So
That's like my dad. He was one of 9. Wow.
crazy. My mother was one of 11.
Wow.
Anywho, so right after he turned 18, he discovered that everything he knew about his family was a lie.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, his parents were actually his grandparents. And his big sister, Joni, was his biological mother.
Wow.
He was raised in the house with her as his sister. And this is not unheard of. This used to happen a lot.
But like now, what about the other, 7 kids? Were they his brothers and sisters too? Or were they his uncles and aunts. In other words,
Well, they were raised as his brothers and sisters.
right. But they weren't.
But they weren't. They were his uncles and aunts.
So it was just his. Oh my gosh.
And here's the thing. So his friends all knew about it.
You know where I'm going with this is so ridiculous, and I just realized it. Is I'm like, well, oh my God, they raised all those kids of that one daughter had like 8 other kids, and they all raised them as their own. I'm like, no, of course not.
No, not hers.
I get it.
Okay.
It was just this. All the kids were. Isn't that dumb? Like, all right, after that 4th kid, we're not going to raise one more as our own. We're going to tell him.
He was raised with his aunts and uncles.
Like,
Yes.
His grandparents had one very fertile daughter. And she had 8 children.
That's a whole different story.
I'm sorry. I really. Where is my head? That is ridiculous.
That's hilarious.
It's like one of those Russian dolls that you open up and there's always another one underneath inside.
Oh boy. So yeah.
So his sister,
So
big
his sister
was his mother.
his mother, and he never knew. And then finally, when he was 18, his 2 best friends in high school told him the night before his graduation.
Oh.
Why would they do that?
Yeah. I know. I know tomorrow's a big day for you, but I just want to give you this big family
FYI,
secret.
And his friends knew about it because actually the entire town knew about it because they were from a small town. It was an open secret in the small community.
Oh, I can't imagine the betrayal you would feel.
Yeah,
Like that everybody
knowing it.
knew but you.
You know, I've talked about this briefly before, but I had an aunt who was adopted, and the entire family knew about it except her.
Yeah.
And I had known about it, but accidentally because I'm a blabbermouth, and so I think they made a point of not telling me too much about it. But everybody else knew.
Right.
And then my grandmother reminded me. I've talked about this before when I was visiting Australia to meet my biological mother. It was really bothering my grandmother. Something was bothering her, and and she finally said, "Julie, now that you've found your mother, you won't tell Diane that she's adopted, will you?"
After all that.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, A, I forgot that she was adopted or maybe didn't know.
Yeah.
And B, no.
Yeah, like that's not my place to tell, but like here's one secret. What's one more?
Yeah, yeah, really. But the funny thing is, a week later, Diane got a phone call from a sibling, and that's how she found out she was adopted.
Again, there's no more family secrets anymore because of this DNA stuff.
Nope.
Everybody is finding out.
Even though it was not a DNA thing. This was 25 years ago.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's a weird coincidence, isn't it?
Story of my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this guy found out the night before his graduation.
Right, and he still kept it to himself for like a couple months. A month and a half, apparently. Then he confronted his grandparents about it. And then being an 18-year-old and angry, he ran away. He got in a car and drove to the nearest town, which was 20 miles away, rented a motel room and got drunk with friends.
Well, did he confront his sister/mother, his sister
So
mother?
then, the woman he'd long considered a sister tracked him down at that motel. And he said, we had a moment of, yes, this happened, I'm sorry, he said, of the conversation. And he was mostly silent. And then we didn't talk about it again for another 15 years.
Oh.
Yikes. Yeah. That may seem difficult to understand for someone who hasn't lived in the shadow of that kind of deception, but bringing that old secret to the surface was hard for everyone involved. Much harder than keeping the secret in the first place, which is something Steve has some understanding about now.
Well, we've talked about it. It's the fact that you've kept a secret is almost always worse than the actual secret.
Always.
Right?
Yeah, and he said part of it was the time of this, which was the early 70s, and also it was a small town, a tight-knit community. The community members who knew, who didn't say anything, were just trying to be good neighbors.
And how long
Yikes.
before he talked about it again? 15 years?
15 years.
Can you imagine what it was like at Christmas with all your, siblings and your sister mom?
With the elephant in the room?
Like what, no one talking about it?
You know what? That happens so much in families.
Oh, my God.
So much it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just always the elephant in the room. And of course, I'm the first one that wants to say, so
yeah.
let's break this down. Let's unpack this.
So I remember this is again, a very small secret. It's not like a big, somebody's parentage or anything. But my mom would call me, say we were gonna go out for my mom's wedding anniversary, right? Mm-hmm. and we're all ready to go to lunch, and she calls me up before, and she said, I just want you to know that, Bill and I had a big fight this morning, and we're not speaking. I'm like, oh, well, then we should probably call off the lunch, right? Because it's a celebration of your anniversary. And she's like, no, I want to see you. So, we're going to have the lunch. I'm like, well, but you're not
It's gonna be
talking.
awkward for everybody.
You're not speaking, And she's like, no, but I don't want to ruin everyone's time. I just want to go. And so we all went to this lunch knowing that the couple that we were celebrating weren't speaking. And so we would sit there, and toast them. Happy anniversary, and they would just kind of smile and do the toast and look at each other, and my mom would have a tear in her eye, and I'm like, this is terrible. Why is no one speaking about this? And my brothers knew about it too, she had called them as well. So we all knew, but we didn't speak. So I guess in a small way, in a very small secret like that, we had a fight this morning, as opposed to your sister is your mother. I can see that kind of denial that you go through these motions in a family.
But isn't that funny? That I have been in situations like that where my husband and I are having quite a heated argument.
Yes. And you have to go somewhere together.
Yes. But then it's as soon as I get into a room, I think it's just the kind of person I am, everything goes out the window, and I'm normal because I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable.
Sure, I get that too. And of course, everybody, I'm sure, does that to some extent. So you don't bring your problems out into the world for everyone to know. But the point is that my mother was calling me to tell me.
So it must have been a big fight.
Ahead of time. And I thought, I wonder if I would have even noticed if she hadn't told me and
Probably
we just went
not.
to lunch.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've been married a long time. They probably didn't speak to each other that much.
So oh, my goodness. Wow.
Just remember one of those very uncomfortable anniversary celebrations.
I think that happens in every household, about every household, everyone that I've experienced.
But it's willful denial, and so that's why this is the way I can relate to this man who did not speak about it for another 15 years, even though that's a much bigger secret.
Yeah.
And it's 15 years.
Well, and everybody knew about it too.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Right.
So I guess he just had to have 15 years to process.
Well, everyone at their own time or in their own time.
Right. So when Danny Shapiro in that interview said the secret keepers are carrying a burden, but the question is not so much whether they should share that secret, but when. Yeah. All right. So the moral of the story is tell the truth.
Yeah.
Let's take a break.
Thank you for listening to CutOff Jeans with Julie Dixon-Jackson and Richard Castle. That's me.
All right, we're back.
That means it must mean it's story time.
It does mean it's story time.
Thank God.
It's a combination of story time and a book nook.
Oh.
Yeah, because this week's story time and next week's is Laureen Pittman, who is the author of The Lies That Bind.
The Lies That Bind.
Which is her memoir.
That's a good title.
Yeah, I know.
I like it.
Blessed be the lies that bind.
I don't know that. Is that a...
I think it's from Little House on the Prairie, The Ties That Bind.
Oh. Little House. It's from. I should know it if it's from Little House, but I have a feeling if it's from Little House, it's probably from from Bible school or something.
Yes.
Yeah, and that this Jew did not go to Bible school.
No, it's not from Bible school. No, it's from their church. They used to sing it in church. I think.
Okay, all right.
Or maybe I'm thinking bringing in the sheaves.
Well, I do know, but only because the kids, the neighbors, on The Simpsons sang it all the time.
Did they?
The Flanders kids, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We digress.
Yes. The Lies That Bind.
The Lies That Bind. So I've actually read this book, or most of it, before I spoke with Laureen. Guys, if you're going to write a book, please do an Audible version of it, because I don't have time to sit down and read books. And I really, really want to. But if I have enough time and I'm relaxed enough to read a book, I'm going to fall asleep. That's just the way I am. That's the way I am. So
you listened to... Did she read the audiobook or...
No, I actually read it.
Oh, you read
it?
Yes. Okay.
I did read it. I guess I had... Because it's a quick read.
Mm-hmm.
Full disclosure, as I am wont to do, I haven't finished it. But anyway, it's great. And
Don't tell Laureen.
No, she knows. I think I told her. But this is the first part of Laureen's story. And check it out. We'll see you on the other side. Hey, everybody. I am talking to Laureen Pittman, who is an adoptee and an author. Hi, Laureen.
Hi, Julie. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad you can join us today. Laureen has written a book called The Lies That Bind, which speaks to me. And you know what it's about, everybody, because that's what the show's about. So, Laureen, I'd like to get a little bit of your background on your story. So why don't you tell us what it was like being an adoptee for you?
Okay. Well, I always knew that I was an adoptee. I don't remember ever being told. So my parents kind of eased us into that because I always knew I was adopted. And it didn't seem weird to me. It seemed normal because, heck, that was my normal. And I had a brother who was also adopted 2 years before I was, my adopted brother. And we thought things were kind of normal until we got older and realized that other families were different. Other families, looked alike. They had people that looked alike, and that was important. And big family gatherings, that wasn't a thing with us. Even my parents and their biological family, aunts and uncles, family wasn't a big thing for me, but I noticed that it was for other people.
Yeah, same here. I have a very similar experience.
And being adopted wasn't a problem. I wasn't angry about it. I really didn't think a whole lot about it until probably I was in college, and I there was an aha moment of when I realized, hey, I'd like to know more about being adopted, and that happened right towards my senior year of college, and I decided I wanted to go away because I had to stay at home and work my way through college. And for my senior year, I wanted to do something different, and so I applied to this international program to study abroad, and was accepted. And my mother was just over the moon about it. She was excited that I was going, but she was excited about where I was going. And it turns out I was going to this place called Bradford, England.
Mm-hmm. I have family from there too.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I remember saying, hey, us too. We're the Dixons of Bradford.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't realize. Yeah, small world.
Yeah.
But my mother was just, her family had come from Bradford. Her mother had come over on a boat and settled in America and eventually in California. And she kept telling me, you've got to go and find our family. You've got to find the Varleys. It was the Varleys. You've got to find them. You've got to find. She kept pulling out these old documents and things and shoving them in my face. You've got to do this. You've got to do this while you're over there. How exciting. But all I could do was keep thinking, this isn't my. I just wasn't interested. And I think it hit me then that that's not my family. I wasn't interested. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I remember being interested in genealogy, but feeling like it didn't really apply to me. So what was the point? Right. Yeah.
Well, exactly. I mean, I felt like, well, I don't really have, I loved my mom and dad, and they were fine. I mean, we had a normal childhood, I think. It was dysfunctional, I think, like everybody's family. My mother was an alcoholic, which I didn't realize until I was older. It doesn't stick out when you're a kid. And why is mom taking all kinds of naps all the time? And, that sort of thing. But yeah, once I had that aha moment, I thought, well, why am I not interested in this? I mean, should I be? And that's when I started getting interested in, well, what about my family? I have another family out there. I'd like to learn more about that. So that's when I started thinking. I had a whole year abroad, and during that whole time, being away from my adoptive parents and kind of discovering myself, I really did. I just started thinking more about, what about my family? I have people. I have a tribe. I have,
Yeah.
And so that's when I really started thinking about it. And it was when I got home from college that at that point is when I started searching in earnest.
Okay. So what was the next step?
Well, when I got back from college, I was ready to graduate, and at the same time that I got my degree in political science, I also had studied paralegal studies and was going to work for a little while in that field before going to law school, which By the way, I never ended up going to law school, and I took a lot of classes in family law and studied a lot about adoption and learned a lot about back then about, black market babies and all that kind of stuff. But I also learned about how to search or what are the legalities of it anyway. And, as you know, living in California, we still are, and were back then in the dark ages where we can't, we don't have access to our information unless a court allows us to, which is sucks. But so anyway, I was adopted through social services, through the local government, through the county of San Bernardino. And I knew that there was a process in place where I could go to the social services department and sign a waiver. I think it was called a waiver of confidentiality. And it wasn't really a registry of, you would sign this waiver of confidentiality and they'd pull your file up and look at it and put this in the file that says, if anybody wants to contact me from my biological family, I'm open to it. And possibly if there was already something in there from my mother or some other family member that was allowed to do such a thing, once I put something in there, they could tell me, oh, there's somebody looking for you. So that was my first step. I thought, well, I'm going to, contact the county social services and do that. And that's what I did. I mean, this was back in 1986 or 87. And so I went down there. I had this appointment with this guy. I didn't know him, this social worker. And I thought I was just going to sign this paper and he was going to stick it in my, super secret file and that would be it. But in the back of my mind, of course, I'm hoping, well, maybe my mother has signed a waiver too, and it's already in there and I can go and all of a sudden I'll just know, everything I need to know. That was the naive part of me thinking in the back of my mind. So I go and sit down with this guy and he walks me back to his office and I sign the waiver and he hands me this envelope. And I thought, well, this is weird. What? Did my mother sign a waiver and this is her information? Wow, that was easy. I'm thinking, what is this information? And I walked back to the car and opened up the envelope and it was all of my non-identifying information, which I didn't even really, in my little college studies that I had done, I didn't realize that I was going to get this or that I was entitled to it.
Yeah. And I was wondering about that. As I said, I haven't finished the book, but was that something that was standard or was he doing something special for you?
I thought at the time it was something special.
Okay.
Now I'm reading, well, you're entitled to that information, that anybody can go and do that. I've heard, that people have requested that, even, recently and never hear back or, they don't, or they have to pay for it or something crazy like that. I really think that this guy went above and beyond, especially the way he presented it to me. It was really like a story. And you could tell he had dug into my, I call it my super secret file, that.
Do you think he was like an amateur genealogist or detective that just that was interested in genealogy himself?
I think maybe. I was fascinated and I was really surprised that he had given me so much detail.
Yeah, me too. He sounds like an angel.
Yes, and and there was a cover letter there, and the cover letter said, I'm going to get on the trail. I'm going to search for your mom and see if she wants to sign this waiver. Blah blah blah. And this even surprised me even more because the paperwork, the waiver that you sign or that I signed that they had in California in the county of San Bernardino said that the county, the social workers, social services cannot do a search for you. They cannot look for anybody for you. They are just going to take this paper and put it in your file. So that's what I thought was going to happen. So yes, I do think this guy had an interest in genealogy and
sounds like it.
I was thankful for that. But on the other hand, I was very surprised and thought it was weird. And I really didn't think he was going to do any searching because I'm looking at it from, kind of a legal point of view.
Absolutely.
And I'm thinking he can't do that. And, my paper's just going to sit there in the file forever until somebody, else signs a waiver or, maybe it'll just sit there.
Yeah.
My idea already was to hire a private investigator because this is 1987 and, the internet is not there yet. I hired a private investigator and with a little bit of information that I already knew, my parents had given me the adoption decree that they had a copy of, and it was baby girl Michael's. And so I had that bit of information, and they also broke the news to me, and I think that they thought this would stop me from searching or make me take a step back anyway. They told me that I was born in prison, that my mother was in prison when she gave birth to me. At that age, I thought, well, I really want to meet her now, because I really want to tell her that I understand and I'm not angry and I had a pretty good upbringing, and, all that stuff that you tell yourself is why you're searching. So I took that information, but now I had the non-identifying information, which the social worker had given me too. And I took all of that to the private investigator. I can remember, I paid the guy, $1,200, I think, total. And they were able to find her pretty easily just by going to the prison, because I had that information now, and finding somebody who had gone out on medical, leave or whatever, from the prison to the prison ward at the hospital during those days that I was born. So they found her without a problem.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that search went really well, considering, no internet, no DNA, none of the modern things we take for granted now that are, amazing tools to search. So I was like blown away how quickly they found her, or found out who she was, I guess is what I should say, because actually finding her took a little doing. Okay. Because she was determined not to be found,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So she didn't want to be found. And so it complicated things because much to my chagrin, the social worker was in fact trying to track her down. So he was doing that, and he, found her, but she was hidden away, a very successful woman. She got out of prison, went to college, and she was leading a very successful life on her own. And, but her phone number was unlisted. She made sure to keep her address out of, public record as much as she could. And so the social worker in the end found her mother, which is, my maternal grandmother, and called her and said, hey, we're looking for Margaret Michaels, and, somebody's looking for her. And eventually he had to say, it's her daughter. And the mother said, well, you've got the wrong Margaret Michaels, because my daughter never had a child. So he knew immediately he had to back off, which he did. Or I don't think the social worker did. He kind of explained a little more. But anyway, he ended up backing off from the mother, from my mother. And then a few days later, my private investigator did the same thing.
Oh,
Went through a couple of family members and eventually got to my grandmother, and she told the investigator the same thing. Well, you've got the wrong Margaret, because my daughter has never had any children. Eventually, these messages from the grandmother got to Margaret, and Margaret just had a conniption and was angry at the world and lashed out at the social worker, lashed out at the private investigator, and both of them told them all to just go away, and she doesn't want to be found. And,
ugh.
Yeah.
That's so hard to hear, isn't it? It's just, I still don't get it. I mean, I get it in a way, but just because of the shame that they felt at the time, and that's something that they've lived with forever. But she sounds like she kind of moved on with her life and is in a place that she should be proud of. And I don't know.
I think she would have liked to have been left alone, but gave it a little bit of time, because the investigator, when they closed the case, sent me their notes and everything and said, well, we have her address. We're giving that to you because we're closing the file, So I sat with that for a little while, and I ended up writing to her first. It took me a little while, at first, obviously I was very sad, and, then the sadness kind of wore off, and I was angry.
Mm-hmm.
And like, well, how can she, like, it's like she's denying I exist. It's not my lie. How am I supposed to, keep this secret? I'm a person. I'm just walking around, it's like, it was just, so I wrote her a letter.
Okay.
And I didn't keep a copy of what I wrote, but I did keep her letters. And yeah, she was very upset to that she had been found, and was very upset. She thought everybody was betraying her because she had been promised that the records would be sealed. And, I think for as smart as I think she is, she was looking at it very naively because, sure, the records are sealed, but how can you keep a secret as to,
Well, there's another human out there, as you said, and that for me is the hardest thing to wrap my head around, how somebody can just care about their own rights and at the same time deny another human the exact same rights that people take for granted.
So I was upset after the first letter, same kind of thing. I kind of withdrew about the whole thing and let it go, and just figured that, and her letters were very self-absorbed, and she didn't. I waited until I had my first child. It was a few years later, and I wrote her a second letter and sent her a picture. And I said, look, can we just bury the hatchet? There are some things I'd like to know. Here's a picture of your grandson. If you don't want to get to know him, that's fine. Can you answer some questions for me? And I started asking some really basic questions like, does he look anything like you? Can you send me a picture? I don't need to know, details about the family. I won't tell the family anything. She wrote back, and she didn't even ask me she didn't say a word about my son.
Weird.
Even say, what, nothing.
Yeah, it sounds like she's a narcissist.
Yes, yeah. Yes. That's what I was too young back then to realize what that was all about.
Yeah.
But I realize now that that's part of it. And actually getting to know some of her family members more recently, and them opening up to me about her and their family, I realized, yes. And that's just the way it is. And I figure she's just probably not the type of person I'd want to get to know anyway if I were to meet her on the street. So I've kind of come to terms with it. It's still sad to me that it has to be that way.
Yeah, you've gotten on that side, at least as far as you can, really. Okay, let's get into a little bit of the DNA component.
I kid around in the book about how I don't know what really prompted me to start really thinking about it again. But I don't really think I was thinking about my biological father. I thought that would be a bonus.
Okay, so that is the end of the first part of Laureen's interview.
Great. Can't wait for part 2 next week.
Me too. Why don't you talk us out of here?
I can talk you out of anything.
I don't know about that.
I'm Richard Castle. In addition to being the producer and co-host of this podcast, I am a musician and a songwriter. And you can find out all that information about me at my website, richardcastle.com, or you could just follow me on the Twitter at Castle Songs.
I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. On the Twitter, I'm at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. The podcast on the Twitter is at CutOff Jeans Pod. Join the Facebook group. It's super fun. CutOff Jeans Podcast is what it's called. Answer a question. Make me laugh. And you can email me directly if you like, JulesJackson at cutoffjeans.com. Check us out.
Julie,
right.
I keep forgetting every week. What is our little slogan? What is our little catchphrase?
Our catchphrase, Richard, and we should have some. I think I'm going to make some swag.
You're going to make good because I never get any swag, so go make some swag.
So I'll make some.
And what is it going to say in that swag?
The truth is in your jeans.